4,287 meters. The number burned in Corporal Ethan Cole's mind as his finger touched the trigger. Through the scope, a man with a scarred face stood talking with his lieutenants, completely unaware that death was doing calculus 2.5 miles away. The wind kicked up dust devils in the Afghan valley, temperature climbing past 100 degrees. At this distance, the bullet would be in the air for nearly 5 seconds. 5 seconds for the wind to push it. 5 seconds for gravity to pull it down 43 feet. 5 seconds for the earth to rotate beneath it. Staff Sergeant Wyatt Ford lay beside him, eye pressed to the spotting scope. Wind holding steady at 15 miles per hour, 2 o'clock. You've got maybe a 3-second window before it gusts again. Ethan's breathing slowed. His heart rate dropped to 50 beats per minute, the rhythm his grandfather had taught him when he was 8 years old, shooting elk in the Wyoming mountains. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. At the bottom of the breath, in that space between heartbeats where the world goes perfectly still, that's where you find the shot. His grandfather had been right about a lot of things. The crosshairs settled, the wind paused, and Ethan Cole pulled the trigger on a shot that would make him a legend and haunt him for the rest of his life. But to understand how a 22-year-old kid from a cattle ranch in Wyoming ended up on an Afghan ridge attempting the impossible, you need to go back. Back to where all of this started. Back to another ridge, another war, and another 22-year-old who thought he understood what it meant to be a sniper. Korea, December 1952, Chosin Reservoir. The cold was a living thing that could kill you as surely as any bullet. Gunnery Sergeant James Prophet Cross lay in a snowdrift that had probably saved his life twice already by hiding him from Chinese patrols. His hands were so numb he could barely feel the trigger of the M1C Springfield. 22 years old, fresh off a cattle ranch in Wyoming, and already responsible for 18 confirmed kills. 18 men who would never go home. 18 families who would get a telegram and a folded flag. 18 faces that visited him every time he closed his eyes. Through the scope, the Chinese officer was a clear target at 1,200 yards, a distance most men considered impossible in 1952. But Prophet had grown up shooting coyotes at distances that made other ranchers laugh. His father had taught him to read the wind by watching grass bend. His grandfather had shown him how to calculate bullet drop by understanding the arc of thrown stones. When the Marines put a rifle in his hands and told him to become a killer, he simply applied the same principles to larger targets. The wind screamed across the frozen ridge. Prophet adjusted for it, his calculations running on instinct and experience. The officer turned, presenting a perfect profile. 1 shot, 1 chance. The rifle kicked. The officer fell. 18 became 19. Prophet whispered his ritual into the howling wind. Forgiven. Not because he believed it, but because saying it was the only thing that let him pull the trigger again when the next target appeared. 60 years later, that same man lay in a hospital bed at the Cheyenne VA Medical Center, his body finally surrendering to the lung cancer that had been growing inside him for the past 18 months. Stage 4, the doctor said, weeks at most. But Gunnery Sergeant James Prophet Cross had survived the Chosin Reservoir, 2 tours in Vietnam, and more close calls than most men saw in 10 lifetimes. He wasn't about to go quietly. His grandson sat beside the bed, watching the old man's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance from the oxygen machine. Ethan Cole was 22 years old, the same age Prophet had been at Chosin. The resemblance was striking. Same sharp jaw, same intense eyes that seemed to see farther than they should. Same restless energy that came from growing up on a ranch where sitting still meant something wasn't getting done. Prophet's eyes opened. Even clouded with morphine, they held a clarity that made Ethan sit up straighter. You came, Prophet said, his voice barely above a whisper. Wouldn't be anywhere else, Grandpa. The old man's hand moved toward the duffel bag on the chair beside the bed. Ethan moved to help, but Prophet shook his head at the kind of authority that 60 years of military service had made permanent. Open it, Prophet said. Inside the bag, wrapped in an oilcloth that smelled like Hop's No. 9 solvent in history, was a rifle. The M40A1, woodstock worn smooth by decades of use. The scope still mounted, the glass scratched but clean. Beside it, a leather-bound journal that looked like it had been through 2 wars. And beneath that, a set of dog tags on a chain that had turned green with age. Ethan lifted the rifle with the kind of reverence most people reserve for religious artifacts. The metal was cold, but somehow felt alive in his hands. This rifle has a soul, Prophet said. each word costing him visible effort. Every man I took was to save 10 more. That's not justification. That's just math. Vietnam, 68 through 70. I carried this through jungles where Charlie could be 3 feet away and you'd never see him till the muzzle flash. 127 confirmed kills across 2 wars, Ethan. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd heard the number before, but hearing it now in this hospital room with death waiting in the corner, it hit different. You're the last cross, Prophet continued. Your father, God rest his soul, he wanted no part of this life. The ranch made him happy. Simple things, honest work. But you, Ethan, I see it in you. Same thing that drove me into the recruiter's office in 49. The calling, the need to serve something bigger than yourself. I enlisted 3 weeks ago, Ethan said quietly. Report to Paris Island in 2 days. Prophet's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. I know. The recruiter called me, asked if I thought you were ready. I told him you were born ready, but that ready don't mean shit when the bullets start flying. What did you tell him really? I told him that every crossman for 3 generations has been a Marine, and that you're about to carry on a tradition that's killed better men than us. Prophet's hand found Ethan's, the grip surprisingly strong. The journal. Read it when you need guidance. Every entry is a lesson learned in blood. Some you'll understand right away. Others won't make sense until you're lying on a ridge somewhere, trying to decide if the man in your crosshairs deserves to die. Grandpa, listen to me. Prophet's voice gained strength, the way old sergeants can summon command presence, even when they're dying. Being a sniper isn't about the shooting. Any idiot can pull a trigger. It's about the carrying the burden of the decision, carrying the faces of the men you killed, carrying the knowledge that you're good at something that costs pieces of your soul every time you do it. He coughed, the sound rattling in his chest. Make our name mean something, not in body count, not in records or medals. Make it mean something by who you save when you pull that trigger. I will, Ethan promised. And one more thing. Prophet's grip tightened. When you meet a man named Clayton Brennan, you tell him Prophet says hi. Tell him I expect him to keep you alive the same way I kept him alive in Fallujah. Who's Clayton Brennan? You'll know when you meet him. Prophet's eyes closed. Now get out of here. You've got a bus to catch. And Ethan, don't come to the funeral. I don't want your last memory of me to be a box in the ground. Remember me here. Remember what I told you. And when you're on that ridge, making that impossible shot, remember that I'm with you. 2 days later, Ethan stepped onto a bus headed for Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Paris Island. His mother had cried, his sister Sarah had made him promise to write. And somewhere in Cheyenne, Gunnery Sergeant James Prophet Cross took his last breath and went to join the 127 men who had been waiting for him since Korea. The funeral was held on a clear spring morning. Marines from 3 wars came to pay respects. They folded a flag with precision that made it look easy, even though every crease carried meaning. The 21-gun salute echoed across the valley where Prophet had learned to shoot as a boy. And in his footlocker, at Paris Island, Ethan held Prophet's dog tags and felt the legacy he wasn't sure he was ready to carry. Boot camp was everything the recruiters promised, and worse. 13 weeks of controlled chaos designed to break civilians and rebuild them as Marines. Ethan excelled at the rifle range, which surprised no one who knew his last name. He struggled with the bureaucracy, the endless hurry up and wait, the way the Marine Corps could make simple things complicated through sheer institutional momentum. But he was good with the rifle, better than good. On qualification day, shooting at targets out to 500 yards, Ethan put every round in the black. Perfect score. The range coach, a grizzled sergeant with 20 years of service, pulled him aside afterward. You shoot like someone taught you right, he said. My grandfather, Gunnery Sergeant James Cross. The range coach's expression changed. Prophet Cross? Yes, Sergeant. I served with him in Fallujah, '04, best shot I ever saw. Watched him put rounds through a window the size of a dinner plate at 800 meters. Saved a lot of lives that day. He studied Ethan. You got his eyes. Let's see if you got his gift. 3 months after boot camp, Ethan reported to Scout Sniper School at Camp Lejeune. 60 days of the most demanding training the Marine Corps offered. Fieldcraft, camouflage, stalking, range estimation, ballistics, meteorology. The instructors were veterans who had walked the walk, and they didn't suffer fools or glory seekers. On the final qualification shoot, the targets ranged from 600 to 1,000 yards. Variable wind, heat mirage, stress positions, everything designed to simulate the chaos of combat. Ethan went 9 for 10, missing only once when the wind shifted mid-flight on an 800-yard shot. The chief instructor, a master sergeant with multiple deployments and a face that looked like it had been carved from leather, signed Ethan's qualification papers and handed him the scout sniper tab. "You're good, Cole, real good, but don't let that go to your head. Afghanistan will teach you the difference between good and alive." "Yes, Master Sergeant. One more thing." The instructor pulled out a folder. "Your orders came through. 3rd Recon Battalion, FOB Cobra, Helmand Province. You're replacing a sniper named Miles Cole. No relation, I'm guessing." "No, Master Sergeant. He was killed 3 weeks ago. Taliban ambush. Good man. Better shot. Lasted 8 years in the Corps before his number came up." The instructor's expression hardened. "Out there, legacy doesn't mean shit. Your grandfather's reputation won't stop bullets. You understand that?" "Yes, Master Sergeant." "Good. Because 3rd Recon doesn't need a prophet. They need a sniper who can do the job and come home alive." 3 weeks later, Ethan stepped off a C-130 at Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan. The heat hit him like a physical force, a wall of dry warmth that seemed to leach the moisture from his lungs. This was nothing like Wyoming. Nothing like the controlled environment of Lejeune. This was the real thing. The place where careers ended and coffins filled. A Black Hawk helicopter flew him south to Phobie Ab Cobra, a cluster of HESCO barriers and guard towers, sitting in a valley surrounded by mountains that looked like they were waiting for someone to make a mistake. Razor wire glinted in the afternoon sun. Generators hummed. Somewhere in the distance, the steady thump of a 50 cal machine gun on the range provided a soundtrack of controlled violence. 3rd Recon Battalion headquarters was a plywood and sandbag structure that looked like a strong wind could knock it over. Inside, a man sat behind a desk covered in maps, intelligence reports, and coffee cups that suggested he hadn't slept in days. Master Sergeant Clayton Hawk Brennan was 38 years old but looked a decade older. 16 years of service across 4 deployments had carved lines into his face that had nothing to do with aging and everything to do with seeing things no one should have to see. Hawk looked up from his maps. His eyes narrowed as he took in Ethan's fresh uniform, his nervous energy barely contained beneath a facade of military bearing. Then his gaze dropped to the dog tags visible at Ethan's collar. His expression changed, just slightly, the hardness giving way to something that might have been recognition. "Cross," he said, "not a question, but a statement of fact. James Cross was your grandfather." "Yes, Master Sergeant." Hawk stood. When he did, Ethan noticed the scars on his hands, the slight favor of his left leg, the way he moved like a man who had been blown up at least once and put back together by surgeons who did their best with what they had to work with. "Prophet saved my life in Fallujah, '04. I was pinned in a building, 3 insurgents between me and extraction. He put 3 rounds through a window the size of a dinner plate from 800 meters out. Bought me the 30 seconds I needed to make it out alive." He looked Ethan directly in the eyes. "You better be half the man he was, because we need shooters, not tourists." "I'll do my best, Master Sergeant." "Your best got you through training, Corporal. Out here, best isn't always enough." Hawk gestured to the map on his desk. "We lost our primary sniper 10 days ago, Sergeant Miles Cole. Good man, good shot. Taliban ambush caught him in the open. Now we've got a rookie fresh from Lejeune, and Command thinks that's an acceptable replacement." Ethan said nothing. There was nothing to say. The doubt in Hawk's voice was not personal. It was the voice of a man who had seen too many young soldiers arrive full of confidence and leave in body bags. "You'll meet the rest of the team at evening chow," Hawk said. "Get your gear stowed. Familiarize yourself with the base. And Corporal, one more thing. Your grandfather's reputation means you start with respect. But respect out here is like ammunition. Use it wisely, because once it's gone, you don't get a resupply." The barracks were exactly what Ethan expected. Rows of cots, foot lockers, the smell of sweat and gun oil, and the particular staleness that came from too many men living in too small a space for too long. He found an empty cot near the back and began unpacking his gear with the methodical precision that had been drilled into him over months of training. The rifle case came out last. Inside, wrapped in the same oilcloth Prophet had used, was the M40A5. Ethan had insisted on bringing his own weapon, had pulled his strings and called in favors to make it happen. The armorer at Lejeune had looked at him like he was crazy, but when Ethan explained that it was a continuation of his grandfather's rifle, the old sergeant had simply nodded and signed the paperwork. "You must be the new guy." Ethan turned to find a man standing in the doorway. He was in his early 30s, lean and weathered, with eyes that held the particular wariness of someone who had learned not to get attached too quickly. Sergeant First Class Wyatt Ford extended a hand, though his expression remained neutral. "Wyatt Ford, I'll be your spotter, at least until you prove you can hit what you're aiming at." "Ethan Cole, and I don't plan on missing." Wyatt's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He walked over to where Ethan was setting up his gear and looked at the M40A5 with an appraising eye. "That's an older platform," he observed. "Most guys want the bells and whistles. Latest optics, newest chassis systems." "It belonged to my grandfather," Ethan said. "He used an M40A1 in Vietnam. This is the updated version, but it's the same lineage, same philosophy." Philosophy doesn't mean much when you're taking fire. My grandfather had 127 confirmed kills across 2 wars with that philosophy. I figure it's worth trusting. For the first time, Wyatt's expression softened, just slightly. 127. That's a hell of a legacy to live up to. "I know." The evening meal in the chow hall was a subdued affair. Men ate quickly, conversations muted by exhaustion and the knowledge that tomorrow might bring another patrol, another firefight, another memorial service. Hawk introduced Ethan to the rest of the team. Corporal Danny Ortega was 26, with an easy smile that seemed out of place in a combat zone but probably kept him sane. Private First Class Marcus Webb was 19, so young he still looked like he should be worrying about high school football rather than Taliban ambushes. They sat at a cornered table, and Ethan could feel their assessment. He was the new variable in an equation they had learned to balance through blood and experience. Trust had to be earned, and he was starting from zero. "So," Danny said, breaking the silence with the kind of forced casualness that suggested he had been elected spokesman, "Heard you shot expert marksman in training." "All the records. Just did what I was trained to do," Ethan replied. "Out here it's different," Wyatt added. "The wind doesn't behave like it does on a flat range. The heat creates mirages that'll make you second-guess your own eyes. And the targets shoot back." "I understand that." "Do you?" Because understanding and experiencing are 2 very different things. Cole was one of the best we had, 8 years of operational experience, and he still made a mistake that got him killed. What makes you think you'll do better? The question hung in the air. Ethan could feel every eye at the table on him, waiting to see how he would respond. He thought about Prophet's words, about the journal still sitting in his footlocker, filled with lessons written in the cramped handwriting of a man who had faced these same doubts 60 years ago. "I don't know if I'll do better," Ethan said quietly. "I don't know if I'm ready for what's out here. But I know that my grandfather taught me that being a sniper isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and pulling the trigger anyway, because the alternative is watching good men die." The table fell silent. Then Marcus, the youngest of them, nodded slowly. "That's the realest thing I've heard since I got here." Hawk arrived at their table, a mug of coffee in his hand. He pulled up a chair and sat down with the kind of deliberate movement that suggested he had something important to say. "Listen up. We have a situation developing. Intel came in this afternoon. There's a Taliban bomb maker operating in our sector. They call him the Engineer, responsible for at least 14 IED attacks in the last 6 months, including the one that killed Cole and 2 other Marines. He's moving through the valley tomorrow, meeting with a regional commander. This is our chance to take him off the board." "What's the plan?" Wyatt asked. "Overwatch mission. We insert tonight, establish a hide site on the ridge overlooking the valley. When the Engineer shows, we confirm positive identification and neutralize the target. Extract under cover of darkness tomorrow night." Hawk looked directly at Ethan. "Cole, you'll be primary shooter." The words landed like a physical blow. Wyatt's expression hardened immediately. "Sir, with all due respect, I've been doing this for 10 years. Ortega has field experience. Why are we putting the rookie in the primary position?" "Because I need to know what he's made of," Hawk said flatly. "And because his training scores suggest he might be capable of a shot the rest of us can't make. The Engineer is smart. He'll keep his distance. We're talking possible engagement ranges north of 4,000 meters. "That's an absurd distance," Wyatt protested. "The longest confirmed kill in battalion history is 3,600 meters, and that took 3 spotters in perfect conditions. I know what I'm asking, Hawk said. He turned to Ethan. Your grandfather told me something in Fallujah. He said that sometimes you don't choose the impossible shot. The impossible shot chooses you. And when it does, you either rise to meet it or you live with the knowledge that you let good men down. Can you make the shot? Ethan thought about the rifle in his footlocker, about Prophet's journal, about the burden of 127 souls. He met Hawk's eyes and gave the only answer he could. I'll make the shot. The briefing room was lit by the harsh glare of fluorescent lights that made everyone look like they hadn't slept in weeks. Maps covered the walls, marked with grid coordinates and red circles indicating enemy activity. A large satellite image of the valley dominated the center table. The terrain features rendered in shades of gray and brown that somehow made the landscape look even more hostile than it did in person. The target is here, said the intelligence officer, a lieutenant who looked too young to be making life and death decisions. He pointed to a narrow road winding through the valley floor. The engineer will be traveling in a convoy, 3 technical vehicles armed with heavy machine guns. Intel suggests he'll be in the second vehicle, along with at least 2 bodyguards. What's the positive identification? Wyatt asked. How do we confirm it's him and not some random insurgent? The engineer has a distinctive scar, the lieutenant replied. Burn mark covering the left side of his face, result of an IED that detonated prematurely 3 years ago. Ironic, really. He'll also be the only one in the convoy wearing Western-style clothing. Jeans, button-up shirt. He thinks it makes him look less like a target. And the rules of engagement? Ethan asked. Standard ROE applies. Positive identification required before engagement. Avoid civilian casualties. If there's any doubt, you hold fire and we'll find another opportunity. There won't be another opportunity, Hawk interjected. The engineer is paranoid. This meeting is unusual. He knows we're looking for him. After tomorrow, he'll go to ground for months. Then we make it count, Wyatt said. What's the terrain like? Hell, basically, the lieutenant replied. He pulled up a topographical map. You'll insert here Northwest Ridge, 8-kilometer hump through mountain trails, most of it in the dark. Establish your hide site by 0400. The convoy is expected to move through the valley between 0700 and 0900, depending on how paranoid the engineer is feeling. Expected range to target? The lieutenant hesitated. Best estimates put the convoy route at approximately 4,287 meters from your position. The room fell silent. Even Danny, usually quick with a joke, looked stunned. 4,287 meters was not a distance. It was an impossibility. It was a shot that existed in the realm of mathematics and luck, where a dozen variables had to align perfectly or the bullet would miss by yards. That's beyond anything we've ever attempted, Wyatt said. The physics alone are insane. Wind drift, bullet drop, the Coriolis effect. At that distance, the Earth's rotation becomes a factor. I'm aware, Hawk said, which is why I'm asking the question. Can it be done? Ethan studied the map, his mind already running calculations. He thought about Prophet's journal, about the entry he had read the night before. Vietnam, 1968. Sometimes the shot demands more than you think you can give, and then you give it anyway. With the right conditions, Ethan said slowly, it's possible. Not probable, but possible. I'll need stable wind, clear visibility, and time to calculate. A lot of time. You'll have it, Hawk said. This isn't a rush job. We have one chance. Make it count. The insertion began at 2200 hours. 6 Marines moving through darkness so complete it seemed to have physical weight. Ethan carried the M40A5 and 60 pounds of additional gear. Wyatt moved beside him carrying the spotting scope and range-finding equipment. Behind them, Danny and Marcus provided security, their rifles at the ready. 2 additional Marines, riflemen whose names Ethan hadn't learned yet, covered the rear. The terrain was exactly as brutal as promised. Goat trails that switched back on themselves. Loose scree that threatened to send them tumbling down the mountain with every step. They moved in silence, communication limited to hand signals barely visible in the ambient starlight. The temperature had dropped with the sun, and Ethan's breath came in visible clouds that dissipated quickly in the thin mountain air. 3 hours into the march, they stopped for a brief rest. Ethan took the opportunity to check his rifle, running his hands over the familiar contours in the darkness. Beside him, Wyatt unscrewed the cap from his canteen and took a careful sip. Your grandfather, Wyatt said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. Prophet, what was he like? Ethan considered the question. Hard, he finally said. Fair, but hard. He never sugarcoated what being a sniper meant. Used to tell me that every man he killed stayed with him, that they had names and families and lives that ended when he pulled the trigger. But he also said that every man he killed would have killed 10 more Marines if given the chance. That's how he justified it. Did it work? The justification? I don't know. He had nightmares until the day he died, but he never regretted his service. Said it was the most important thing he ever did. Even though it cost him pieces of himself, he never got back. Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. Cole used to say something similar, that the rifle takes more than it gives, but that the taking is worth it if you're saving lives. He took another drink. I hope you're ready for what comes after you pull that trigger, Cole, because making the shot is the easy part. They reached the ridge at 0345, 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The hide site was a natural depression behind a cluster of boulders, providing cover and concealment while offering an unobstructed view of the valley below. Wyatt immediately began setting up the spotting scope, while Ethan assembled his shooting position with the kind of meticulous care that would have made Prophet proud. The M40A5 settled into place on its bipod. Ethan adjusted the scope, checking the parallax and ensuring the reticle was perfectly level. Behind him, Danny and Marcus established a security perimeter, their attention focused outward on the approaches to their position. Hawk moved to Ethan's side, his own binoculars scanning the valley below. In the pre-dawn darkness, the landscape was a study in shadows and deeper shadows, terrain features barely distinguishable from one another. "You good?" Hawk asked. "As good as I can be, Master Sergeant. Your grandfather told me something else in Fallujah. He said that the moment before the shot is when a sniper truly knows himself. All the training, all the preparation, it comes down to one question. Can you do what needs to be done? And what if the answer is no? Then you're honest about it, and you let someone else take the shot. There's no shame in knowing your limits. The shame is in pretending you don't have any." Ethan thought about that as dawn began to break over the mountains. The sky lightened from black to deep purple to the pale blue of early morning. Details emerged from the darkness. The road through the valley, barely more than a dirt track. The scattered buildings of a small village. The ridgeline on the far side, perhaps 4 miles away. 4,287 meters, more than 2.5 miles. A distance where the bullet would be in flight for nearly 5 seconds. Where wind could push the round 40 feet off course if he miscalculated. Where the rotation of the Earth itself would affect the trajectory. "Range confirmed," Wyatt said, his eye pressed to the spotting scope. 4,287 meters, give or take 5. Wind? Variable. Gusting between 12 and 20 miles per hour from the 2 o'clock position. We'll need to wait for a lull. Temperature? Rising. Currently 78 degrees. Estimate 105 by 0900. Ethan pulled out a small notebook, the same kind Prophet had carried in Vietnam. He began running calculations, checking and rechecking the mathematics. Bullet drop at this distance would be over 500 inches. Wind drift, assuming a 15 mile per hour average, would push the bullet nearly 4 feet to the left. The Coriolis effect, that strange consequence of the Earth's rotation, would add another 4 inches of drift. The scope's reticle swam slightly in the heat waves already beginning to rise from the valley floor. Ethan blinked, forced his eyes to focus. Somewhere down there, the engineer was moving through his morning routine, unaware that death was calculating his coordinates. "Contact," Wyatt said suddenly. "Valley floor, grid 374 by 882, multiple vehicles approaching from the south." Ethan swung the rifle toward the coordinates, the scope's magnification bringing the vehicles into sudden clarity. 3 technical trucks, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Armed men visible in the beds of the pickups, heavy machine guns mounted on improvised turrets. The vehicles moved slowly, cautiously, their drivers aware that the valley was exposed and dangerous. "Can you identify the target?" Hawk asked. "Not yet," White replied. "Distance is still too great. Wait one." The convoy moved with agonizing slowness. Minutes stretched into eternities. Ethan's heart rate had settled into the sniper's rhythm, 55 beats per minute. His breathing was measured, controlled. The rifle became an extension of his body, the crosshairs steady despite the tremor that wanted to creep into his muscles. "Second vehicle stopping," Wyatt reported. "Passengers dismounting. I have visual on multiple individuals. Wait, I have the scar." Facial features match the intel photos. That's the engineer. Through his scope, Ethan could see them now. Tiny figures at an impossible distance. their features blurred by heat mirage and the limits of optics. But one man stood out. The scar, even at this range, was visible, a twisted mass of tissue covering the left side of his face. Positive identification confirmed, Hawk said. Cole, you are cleared to engage at your discretion. Ethan's finger moved to the trigger. Every lesson, every hour on the range, every word from Prophet's journal, it all came down to this moment. He checked his calculations one last time, adjusted for wind, for temperature, for the imperceptible curve of the earth beneath him. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Hold, he said quietly. What? Hawk's voice was sharp. Why? There's someone else, Ethan replied. Small person, child maybe, moving toward the engineer's position from the third vehicle. Through the spotting scope, Wyatt could see what Ethan had noticed. A small figure, no more than 4 or 5 years old, running toward the engineer with the uncoordinated enthusiasm of a child. The engineer turned, and even at this distance, Ethan could see the man's expression soften as he scooped the child into his arms. The engineer's son, Wyatt said, his voice hollow. Intel didn't mention family traveling with him. Ethan's crosshairs were steady on the engineer's chest, but the child was in his arms, small face pressed against the man's shoulder. The shot was impossible now. Even if Ethan could guarantee hitting the engineer, the child would be in the immediate vicinity. The risk was unacceptable. Rules of engagement are clear, Hawk said, but there was no accusation in his voice. No civilians. Hold fire. The seconds ticked by. The engineer held his son, pointing at something in the distance, the child following his father's gesture with innocent curiosity. It was a moment of humanity in the midst of war, a reminder that the man in the crosshairs was more than just a target designation. Then the child squirmed free, running back toward the third vehicle where someone, a woman, perhaps the mother, was calling to him. The engineer watched him go, a smile visible even through the scope. Then he turned back to his men, and the moment of humanity passed. Window clear, Wyatt said. You have the shot. Ethan's finger returned to the trigger. His mind ran through the calculations one last time, a final verification of mathematics and instinct. 4,287 meters. Wind at 14 miles per hour, relatively stable. Temperature 102 degrees. No atmospheric conditions that would significantly affect the trajectory. He thought about Prophet's words. Every man I took was to save 10 more. He thought about the 14 Marines killed by the engineer's bombs. He thought about the child, safely out of the impact zone, playing with a toy truck in the dirt. He controlled his breathing. At the bottom of his breath, in that moment of perfect stillness between heartbeats, he squeezed the trigger. The rifle recoiled against his shoulder. The report echoed across the valley, a sharp crack that seemed impossibly small for what it represented. Through the scope, Ethan watched the bullet's path in his mind, tracking its arc across the impossible distance. 4.9 seconds. That's how long it would take for the round to cover the distance. An eternity compressed into 5 heartbeats. The engineer's head snapped back. His body crumpled. The men around him froze for a split second of confusion before chaos erupted. Some ran for cover. Others returned fire, their muzzle flashes visible as they sent rounds toward the ridgeline, shots that fell hundreds of meters short of the hide site. Confirmed kill, Wyatt said, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. Target down, 4,287 meters. That's a battalion record. Hell, that might be a Marine Corps record. Ethan didn't respond. He was watching through the scope as men gathered around the engineer's body. As the woman ran from the third vehicle, the child in her arms, as she fell to her knees beside the man who had been building bombs and raising a son in a war that had no room for both. Extract, Hawk ordered, now, before they figure out where that shot came from. The team moved with practiced efficiency, breaking down their position and preparing for the long hump back to base. Ethan secured his rifle, hands moving through the familiar motions while his mind replayed the shot. The perfect conditions, the steady wind, the child who had almost been in the wrong place at the wrong time. As they moved down the mountain, Wyatt fell in beside him. That was the cleanest shot I've ever seen, he said quietly. 4,000 plus meters on the first try. Prophet would be proud. Would he? Ethan asked. Or would he just see it as one more name in a journal, one more face in the nightmares? Wyatt didn't answer. There was no answer to give. They walked in silence through the fading morning, 6 men returning from an impossible shot that had just changed the course of a war, even if only in small ways. Behind them, the valley slowly returned to its normal rhythms. The convoy departed, The woman gathered her son, and somewhere in the distance, men with radios were spreading the word that the engineer would build no more bombs. Back at FOB Cobra, the debriefing took 3 hours. Officers asked questions, studied the drone footage, verified the distance and conditions. The battalion commander, a colonel with 20 years of service, reviewed the recordings 3 times before he finally spoke. 4,287 meters, confirmed kill, positive identification verified, rules of engagement followed to the letter. He looked at Ethan with an expression that might have been awe or might have been concern. "Corporal Cole, you just made military history." "I just did my job, sir." "You did more than your job, son. You did something most snipers will never do in their entire careers." The colonel paused. "Your grandfather would be proud. Hell, the entire Corps should be proud." That night, Ethan sat alone in the barracks, Prophet's journal open in his lap. He turned to a blank page and pulled out a pen. The first entry would be hard. They were always hard, but it was necessary. Prophet had taught him that. The journal was not about pride or glory. It was about remembering, about keeping the names, even if the faces faded, about maintaining the accounting so that the burden was never forgotten. He wrote slowly, his handwriting cramped and careful. Afghanistan, 2012. First combat kill. The engineer, 4,287 meters. Intel identified him as terrorist. Result, 14 IEDs no longer built. Cost, one father who held his son before he died. Question, does distance make the act easier, or does it just let us pretend we're not looking them in the eye when we pull the trigger? Below that, he wrote the words Prophet had written in 100 entries before him. Forgiven, but not forgotten. He closed the journal and lay back on his cot, staring at the ceiling of the barracks. Outside, the sounds of the base continued. Helicopters landing and taking off. The distant crack of small arms fire from the range. The murmur of Marines living their lives in the spaces between violence. Ethan thought about the shot, about the perfect conditions and the impossible distance, about the child who would grow up without a father, even if that father had been building bombs. He thought about Prophet's words, about the toll of 127 souls, and he wondered how many more names he would write in the journal before this war was done. Sleep, when it finally came, was troubled. In his dreams, he stood on a frozen ridge in Korea, watching a young Marine named Prophet take a shot across 1,200 yards of snow and ice. And when the target fell, it wore the engineer's scarred face and held a child in its arms. Ethan woke before dawn. He dressed quickly, gathered his rifle, and made his way to the rifle range on the edge of the base. As the sun rose over the mountains of Afghanistan, Corporal Ethan Cole settled into a shooting position and began the work of mastering his craft. Because he understood now in a way that no amount of training could have taught him, that making the impossible shot was only the beginning. The hard part would be learning to live with it. And somewhere in the barracks, Master Sergeant Clayton Hawk Brennan watched the young sniper through binoculars and thought about a conversation he'd had with Prophet Cross 8 years earlier in Fallujah. "Your grandson will be a great sniper someday," Hawk had said. Prophet had looked at him with eyes that carried 2 wars' worth of cost. "I know," he'd replied. "That's what I'm afraid of. Because being great at this job means carrying a price that breaks most men. Promise me something, Brennan. When Ethan shows up in your unit, and he will, you look after him. You teach him not just how to shoot, but how to carry it. Because I won't be there to show him, and someone needs to make sure he doesn't let the rifle define him." Hawk had promised. And now, watching Ethan on the range, adjusting his scope with the same meticulous care Prophet had shown, Hawk understood the cost of that promise. The kid could shoot. That much was clear. The impossible shot proved it. But could he carry what came after? That was the real question. And FOB Cobra, surrounded by mountains that had broken better men, would provide the answer soon enough. The news traveled fast, too fast. Within 6 hours of Ethan's return to FOB Cobra, the drone footage had been analyzed, verified, and sent up the chain of command. Within 12 hours, it was on the desk of every battalion commander in Helmand Province. Within 24 hours, a full-bird colonel from division was flying in to personally debrief the Marine who had just made what might be the longest confirmed kill shot in Corps history. Ethan sat in the operations center, watching officers he'd never met study the footage frame by frame. They replayed the moment of impact, measured the distance 3 different ways, calculated wind drift and bullet drop with the kind of obsessive precision usually reserved for accident investigations. 4,287 meters, the intelligence officer said for the fifth time, like saying it again would make it more believable. Environmental conditions were less than ideal. Heat mirage, variable wind, and he made the shot on the first attempt. The colonel, a man named Hartwick with silver eagles on his collar and combat ribbons that suggested he'd earned his rank the hard way, turned to look at Ethan. His expression was unreadable. Corporal Cole, how many shots have you taken in combat prior to this? One, sir. That was the one. One shot. One kill. At a distance, most trained snipers wouldn't attempt even under perfect conditions. The colonel paused. Your grandfather was Prophet Cross. Yes, sir. I served with him briefly. Ramadi, '06. Watched him make a 1,200-meter shot in a sandstorm that should have been impossible. Afterward, I asked him how he did it. You know what he told me? No, sir. He said that some men are born with the gift, but the gift doesn't mean anything without the discipline to use it right. He looked at Ethan with eyes that had seen too many young Marines come through with talent and leave in body bags. Do you have the discipline, Corporal? I hope so, sir. Hope isn't enough out here. The colonel gestured to the map on the wall. The engineer was a high-value target, but he wasn't operating in a vacuum. Taliban leadership is going to want revenge for this. You just became the most wanted American in Helmand Province. That target on your back, it's not going away. I understand, sir. Do you? Because understanding and living with it are different things. You're about to find out what it means when the enemy starts hunting you specifically. When they put a bounty on your head. When every patrol becomes an opportunity for them to kill the American sniper who took out their bomb maker. The briefing continued for another hour. Intelligence assessments, threat analyses, new protocols for Ethan's security. By the time it ended, Ethan's head was spinning with information he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Hawk walked him back to the barracks in silence. The afternoon heat was oppressive, the kind that made every step feel like wading through syrup. Around them, FOB Cobra went about its business. Marines on patrol rotations, mechanics working on vehicles. The ordinary rhythm of a war that never stopped, even when individuals did. You did good out there, Hawk finally said. Real good. But now comes the hard part. What's that, Master Sergeant? Living up to it. Every mission from here on, people are going to expect you to pull another miracle. Every shot that's not perfect, they're going to question if you've lost it. And the enemy, they're going to be studying that footage too, figuring out what you can do and how to stop you from doing it again. I just want to do my job. Your job just got a hell of a lot more complicated. Hawk stopped walking, turned to face him. Prophet told me something once. He said that the hardest part about being a legend isn't the pressure to perform. It's the weight of knowing that your success becomes other people's standard and your failures become their disappointment. You ready for that? Do I have a choice? No, Hawk said simply. You don't. Welcome to being the guy everyone's counting on. The barracks felt different when Ethan walked in. Conversations stopped. Marines he'd never met before nodded respectfully. The rookie who had arrived 2 weeks ago with everyone doubting him had become something else. Something that made men uncomfortable in ways they couldn't quite articulate. Wyatt found him sitting on his cot, Prophet's journal open in his lap. You okay? Wyatt asked. Define okay. Fair point. Wyatt sat down on the adjacent cot. Listen, what you did out there, that was special. I've been doing this for 10 years and I've never seen anything like it. But Hawk's right. This changes things. The Taliban are going to come at us harder now, and they're going to be specifically looking for you. Let them look. It's not that simple. Wyatt's voice was serious. When you become known, when you become the target, it affects the whole team. Every mission we run, they'll be watching for the sniper position. Every hide site we establish, they'll be looking for the angle that gives us that kind of range. You made yourself famous, and famous gets people killed. I didn't do it for fame, I know, but that doesn't change the result. Wyatt stood up. Get some rest. We've got another patrol tomorrow, and the team needs you sharp, not distracted by all this other noise. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on his cot, staring at the plywood ceiling, listening to the sounds of Marines breathing in the darkness. His mind kept replaying the shot. The 4.8 seconds of flight time. The moment of impact. The woman falling to her knees beside the engineer's body. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the messages that had accumulated. His mother, worried but proud. His sister Sarah, telling him the whole town of Jackson was talking about him. Friends from high school who suddenly remembered they knew him. And one message from a number he didn't recognize. Your grandfather would be proud. Stay safe out there. A friend from Fallujah. Ethan stared at the message for a long time before putting the phone away. Prophet had saved Hawk's life in Fallujah, had made an impossible shot to give one Marine 30 more seconds to escape. And now, 8 years later, Hawk was trying to do the same thing for Prophet's grandson. The weight of legacy pressed down like a physical thing. 3 days after the shot, the first Taliban propaganda video appeared online. It was grainy, clearly filmed on a cheap camera, but the message was crystal clear. A man sat in front of a Taliban flag, his face covered by a scarf, only his eyes visible. He spoke in Pashto, but the translation came through intelligence channels within hours. To the American sniper who killed the engineer, you think you are safe hiding behind your technology and your distance. You think you are untouchable, but I am Hamza the Wolf Durrani. I have killed 43 Soviet snipers. I have killed 19 American soldiers. Your record means nothing to me. Before the end of Ramadan, I will take your head and send it to your family as a warning. You have 4 weeks to leave Afghanistan. If you stay, you die. The briefing room fell silent as the video ended. Ethan sat at the table with Hawk, Wyatt, and the battalion intelligence officer, a lieutenant who looked too young to be making life and death assessments. The wolf is real, the lieutenant said. Hamza Durrani, age approximately 58, fought against the Soviets in the 80s, trained by Spetsnaz defectors, disappeared after the Soviet withdrawal, resurfaced in 2008 when American forces entered Helmand. We have intelligence suggesting he's personally responsible for at least 6 sniper deaths between 2008 and 2010, maybe more. He's the best they have. How does he know about Cole? Hawk asked. The shot made news, sir. The Taliban monitor our communications, and drone footage has a way of leaking. They know we have a new sniper who just made an extraordinary kill. And the wolf, he's traditional. He sees this as a matter of honor. In his mind, Cole challenged him by making that shot. Now he has to respond. So we've got a 58-year-old Taliban sniper who thinks he's in a samurai movie, Wyatt said. Great. Don't underestimate him, the lieutenant replied. The wolf isn't just good, he's patient. He'll study Cole's patterns. He'll wait for the perfect opportunity. And when he strikes, it'll be when we least expect it. What's the recommended course of action? Hawk asked. Division wants Cole pulled from field operations for 2 weeks. Let things cool down. Let the wolf make a move we can counter. Negative, Ethan said. Everyone turned to look at him. If we hide, he wins. If we change our operations because he made a threat, that's letting the enemy dictate our tactics. The kid's got a point, Wyatt said reluctantly. We start acting scared, it affects the whole battalion. It's not about being scared, the lieutenant protested. It's about not putting a high-value asset in unnecessary danger. I'm not an asset, Ethan said quietly. I'm a Marine. And Marines don't hide from threats. Hawk studied Ethan for a long moment. Then he turned to the lieutenant. Tell Division that 3rd Recon appreciates their concern, but Corporal Cole will continue normal operations with enhanced security protocols. We're not letting one Taliban sniper change how we fight this war. Sir, I have to advise against this. Your advice is noted, Lieutenant. Dismissed. After the lieutenant left, Hawk turned to Ethan. You sure about this? Because once we commit, there's no backing down. The wolf is going to come after you specifically. Every mission, every patrol, you'll be wondering if he's out there, watching, waiting. I'm sure, Master Sergeant, if Prophet taught me anything, it's that you can't let fear make your decisions. Prophet also taught you to be smart, Hawk replied. There's a difference between brave and stupid. Let's make sure we stay on the right side of that line. The mission came 4 days later. A village 15 kilometers from FOB Cobra had reported Taliban activity. Intelligence suggested insurgents were using the area to stage weapons and plan attacks. The plan was straightforward. A Marine rifle platoon would sweep through the village, while 3rd Recon provided overwatch from the surrounding hills. Standard operation, low risk, routine. But nothing in Afghanistan was ever really routine. The team inserted before dawn, moving through terrain that was becoming familiar. Rocky hills, scattered vegetation, the constant awareness that every shadow could hide a threat. Ethan carried the M40A5 with the same careful attention he'd learned from months of training. Wyatt moved beside him, the spotting scope making his silhouette distinct in the pre-dawn darkness. They reached their overwatch position on a ridge overlooking the village. Below, the buildings were still dark, no signs of activity. The platoon would be moving in at first light, giving Ethan and Wyatt about 30 minutes to establish their position and survey potential threat areas. Wyatt set up the spotting scope while Ethan assembled his shooting position. The routine was familiar now, almost comforting in its predictability. Check the bipod, adjust the scope, confirm the rifle was loaded and the safety was on until needed. The sun rose slowly, painting the valley in shades of orange and gold that would have been beautiful if they weren't here to kill people. "Platoon is moving in," Hawk's voice crackled over the radio. "Keep your eyes sharp. Intel says this should be quiet, but Intel has been wrong before." The Marines moved through the village in a well-practiced pattern, fire teams clearing buildings, squad leaders coordinating movement, everything by the book. Ethan watched through his scope, scanning windows and rooftops for any sign of threat. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then Wyatt's voice cut through the calm. "Movement, northwest corner of the village, rooftop of the blue building. Two individuals, one carrying what looks like an RPG. Ethan swung his rifle toward the coordinates. Through the scope, he could see two men on a rooftop. One held an RPG launcher. The other was scanning the street below where Marines were advancing. "Distance?" Ethan asked. 800 meters. Wind calm. You have a clear shot." Ethan's finger moved to the trigger. The mathematics were simple at this range. Barely any wind drift. Minimal bullet drop. A shot he could make in his sleep. But something made him hesitate. The man with the RPG was young, maybe 20, scared. His hands shook as he tried to get the launcher into position. This wasn't a veteran fighter. This was a kid who'd probably been handed a weapon and told to kill Americans or be killed himself. "Cole," Wyatt's voice was urgent. "You need to take this shot. They're about to engage the platoon." Ethan's crosshairs settled on the young man's chest. Center mass, the shot that never missed. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then the second man on the roof moved, and Ethan saw something that made his blood run cold. The second man was older, maybe 50, and he held a Dragunov SVD sniper rifle. The distinctive profile was unmistakable even at this distance. "Second shooter," Ethan reported. "Sniper with Dragunov. He's not looking at the platoon. He's scanning the ridgeline." "He's looking for us," Wyatt said. "Take the shot, Cole, now." But Ethan was watching the way the older man moved. Calm, professional, not panicked like the kid with the RPG. This was someone who knew what he was doing, someone who had done this before. The older man's rifle swung toward their position. Not perfectly, but close enough that Ethan knew they'd been spotted. "He's got our position," Ethan said, taking the shot. He fired. The shot was clean, perfect. 800 meters was nothing after making the 4,287-meter kill. The round hit the young man with the RPG center mass, and he dropped instantly. But in the half-second it took Ethan to chamber another round, the older man with the Dragunov fired. The bullet hit the rock 6 inches from Ethan's head. Stone fragments sprayed across his face. He felt a burning sensation along his cheek where a chip of rock had cut him. "Move," Wyatt shouted. "He's got our range." They rolled away from their position just as a second shot impacted exactly where Ethan's head had been. The older man was good, terrifyingly good. He'd estimated their position, calculated the range, and put 2 shots within inches of killing them in the span of 3 seconds. "Return fire," Hawk's voice came over the radio. "All units, we have enemy sniper engaging Overwatch 1. Locate and suppress." Ethan and Wyatt scrambled behind a larger boulder, breathing hard. Below, the village erupted in chaos. The platoon engaged the enemy positions. Machine gun fire echoed off the hills. RPGs streaked across the morning sky. But all Ethan could think about was those 2 shots. The precision, the speed, the calm professionalism of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. "That wasn't some random Taliban fighter," Ethan said, wiping blood from his cheek. "That was a professional." Wyatt was already on the radio reporting the contact. When he finished, he turned to Ethan. "You think that was the Wolf?" "No," Ethan said. "The Wolf is 58. That man moved too easily, too quickly. But whoever he was trained by someone good, really good." The engagement lasted another 20 minutes. The platoon eventually secured the village, killing 3 insurgents and capturing 2 more. The sniper with the Dragunov escaped in the confusion, disappearing into the network of compounds and alleyways before they could pin down his position. Back at Phobe Cobra, the after-action review was tense. Ethan had made his shot, killed the RPG gunner, potentially saved Marine lives. But the counter-sniper contact had everyone on edge. "The enemy sniper got 2 shots off before we could relocate," Wyatt reported. both within inches of Cole's position. He knew exactly where we were. How? Hawk asked. You established that position in darkness. There's no way he could have pre-sighted it. He didn't, Ethan said. He calculated it on the spot, watched where my shot came from, and immediately returned fire. That's not luck. That's training. The intelligence officer pulled up imagery of the village. We recovered the body of the RPG gunner. Local villagers identified him as a low-level Taliban recruit, but they claimed they didn't know anything about a second fighter. No description, no name, just suddenly didn't see him. They're protecting him, Wyatt said, which means he's someone important, someone they respect. Or fear, Hawk added. He turned to Ethan. How's the face? Ethan touched the bandage the medic had applied. Just a scratch. I'll be fine. You got lucky. 6 inches to the left, and we'd be writing letters to your mother. Hawk's expression was grim. This changes the game. The wolf has apprentices, probably multiple. They're going to keep testing us, keep probing our positions until they figure out our patterns. And then the wolf is going to use that information to kill you. So what do we do? Danny asked. He'd been quiet through most of the briefing, but now his usual humor was gone. Do we just wait for them to get lucky? No, Hawk said. We adapt, new protocols. No using the same Overwatch position twice. We rotate snipers randomly so they can't predict which missions Cole will be on. And we start hunting them the same way they're hunting us. You want to bait them? Wyatt asked. I want to make them think they have a pattern figured out and then break that pattern in a way that gets them killed. Hawk looked at each of them. The wolf wants Cole's head? Fine, let him come for it. But he's going to find out that 3rd Recon doesn't roll over for threats. That night, Ethan sat in the barracks with Prophet's journal. He'd been avoiding reading too much of it, treating it like a sacred text that should be absorbed slowly. But now he needed guidance, needed to understand how Prophet had dealt with being hunted. He turned pages until he found an entry from Vietnam, 1969. The NVA have a sniper working this sector. They call him the Tiger. He's good, maybe better than me. He killed Johnson last week. Shot him through a firing port we thought was protected. Killed Martinez 2 days ago while he was on patrol. Both shots over 1,000 yards. Both perfectly placed. Everyone is scared. Morale is breaking because the men know there's someone out there who can kill them from distances they can't even see. Colonel asked me what we should do. I told him the only way to stop a sniper is with another sniper. Tonight I'm going hunting. If I don't come back, tell my wife I love her. Tell my son that some fights you don't walk away from, but you walk into them anyway because that's what Marines do. The entry ended there. Ethan turned the page looking for the continuation. Found it dated 3 days later. Found the Tiger. Took me 2 days of tracking. He was good at hiding his positions, better at moving without leaving traces. But everyone makes mistakes eventually. I waited 18 hours in a hide site, not moving, barely breathing. Finally saw him relocate. Took the shot at 1,400 yards. Killed him clean. But here's what nobody tells you. When I searched his body, I found photos. Wife, 3 kids, letters from home. He wasn't a monster. He was a man doing his job, same as me. The difference is I got lucky and he didn't. Now his kids grow up without a father, and I get to carry that weight along with all the others. The question isn't whether killing him was necessary. It was. He would have kept killing Marines if I hadn't stopped him. The question is how you live with being the one who had to do it. How you look at your own kids and not see his. How you sleep when you know that somewhere, a mother is wondering why her son never came home. I don't have answers. I just have the weight and the prayer that somehow, someday it balances out. Forgiven. Number 62. Ethan closed the journal slowly. Prophet had faced this. Had been hunted by someone who was maybe better. And Prophet had survived by being patient, by outthinking his enemy, by accepting the weight that came with winning. The wolf was out there, probably planning, probably studying Ethan's patterns, probably training his apprentices to probe and test until they found a weakness. But Ethan had something the wolf didn't. He had Prophet's lessons. He had Hawk's experience. And he had a team that was willing to fight smart instead of just fighting hard. A week passed, then another. The Taliban activity in their sector increased. Small probing attacks, pot shots at patrols, IEDs on routes that used to be safe. Nothing coordinated enough to be a major offensive, but enough to keep everyone on edge. And twice more they encountered sniper fire. Never the wolf himself, but his students. Younger men with Dragunov rifles taking shots from extreme range and then disappearing before they could be engaged. Testing distances, mapping positions, learning. It's like they're studying for a final exam, Danny said one night. And we're the test. That's exactly what they're doing, Wyatt replied. The wolf is old school, Soviet trained. He's not going to rush this. He's going to wait until he's absolutely sure he can make the kill, and then he'll take his shot and disappear before we ever know he was there. So how do we stop him? Marcus asked. The youngest member of the team had been quiet since the first sniper contact, clearly rattled by how close Ethan had come to dying. We can't stop him, Hawk said, but we can make him make a mistake. Every man has patterns. Every fighter has habits. The wolf is confident because he's been doing this for 40 years and survived. But confidence can make you predictable. We just need to figure out his pattern before he figures out ours. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the captured Taliban fighters from the village engagement agreed to talk in exchange for medical care. He was young, wounded in the leg during the firefight, more scared of dying than loyal to the cause. The intelligence officer brought the information to Hawk's daily briefing. The prisoner says the wolf has a code, the lieutenant explained. He doesn't kill from ambush. He believes that's cowardly. He wants his target to know he's there, to know they're in a duel. It's some kind of honor thing from his Spetsnaz training. So he announces himself? Wyatt asked skeptically. Not exactly. But he gives his target a chance to know they're being hunted. The prisoner says the wolf sent a letter to the family of every Marine he's killed afterward, as proof that he took them honorably. That's insane, Danny said. No, Ethan said slowly. That's tactical. He wants us scared. He wants us looking over our shoulders. Fear makes you make mistakes. Exactly, Hawk said, which means we use it against him. If the wolf wants Cole to know he's being hunted, fine. Let's make him think he's succeeding. Let's make him think Cole is rattled, distracted, making mistakes. And when he comes in for the kill, we'll be ready. You want to use Cole as bait, Wyatt said. That's a hell of a risk. Got a better idea? Wyatt was silent. Hawk turned to Ethan. I'm not ordering you to do this. This is volunteer only. If you say no, we'll find another way. Ethan thought about Prophet's journal entry, about the tiger, about the 18 hours Prophet had spent in a hide site waiting for a shot that would end a threat and save lives. I'll do it, Ethan said. When do we start? The plan was elegant in its simplicity. 3rd Recon would run a series of Overwatch missions over the next 2 weeks. Standard operations, nothing unusual. But on one mission, selected randomly so that even most of the team wouldn't know which one, Ethan would establish his position in a location that looked protected, but actually exposed him to a specific angle of attack. A trap disguised as a mistake. Hawk and Wyatt would be hidden 400 meters behind Ethan's position, covering the angle the wolf would need to use for the shot. When the wolf revealed himself by firing at Ethan, they would have 3 to 5 seconds to identify his position and return fire. 3 to 5 seconds to kill the wolf before he could kill Ethan. It's a good plan, Wyatt admitted, but it relies on the wolf taking the bait. If he's patient enough to wait, this could drag on for weeks. Then we wait weeks, Hawk said, but I don't think it'll take that long. The wolf is confident, and the prisoner said he wants to finish this before Ramadan ends. That gives us 8 days. And if we're wrong, Danny asked, if the wolf doesn't play by his own rules this time? Then we adapt, Hawk replied. But I don't think we're wrong. Men like the wolf, they live by codes. It's what makes them predictable. The missions began. 3rd Recon ran 3 Overwatch operations in the first 4 days. Each time, Ethan established a position that looked secure, but had an exploitable angle. Each time, Hawk and Wyatt hid behind him, waiting for the wolf to appear. Each time, nothing happened. He's smarter than we thought, Wyatt said after the 3rd mission. He knows we're expecting him. Or he's waiting for us to get comfortable, Hawk replied. Waiting for us to think he's not coming, so we let our guard down. On the 5th day, the mission was a routine patrol Overwatch in a valley they'd covered twice before. Nothing special, low threat assessment, the kind of mission that would normally be assigned to less experienced teams. Perfect bait. Ethan established his position on a ridge overlooking the patrol route. The hide site looked solid, good cover, excellent sight lines, protected from most angles. But Wyatt had identified one approach. A small depression about 1,900 meters away that would give a skilled sniper a clean shot at Ethan's position if he stayed static too long. It was exactly the kind of mistake a rattled, overconfident young sniper might make. Hawk and Wyatt moved into position 400 meters behind Ethan, hidden among rocks that gave them a perfect view of the depression. They settled in and waited. The patrol moved through the valley below. Routine, boring, nothing happening. 2 hours passed. 3. The sun climbed higher. Temperature pushed past 100 degrees. Ethan held his position, scanning the valley through his scope, pretending to focus on the patrol, while his real attention was on his peripheral awareness, waiting for the feeling that someone was watching him, waiting for the instinct that had kept Marines alive in hostile territory for generations. And then he felt it, the weight of eyes on him, the subtle shift in the atmosphere that said he was no longer the hunter but the hunted. Contact! Wyatt's voice was barely a whisper over the radio. Depression at 1,900 meters. Single individual moving into position. He's carrying a long rifle. This could be it. Hold, Hawk ordered. Let him get settled. Let him think he's got time. Through his scope, Ethan kept scanning the valley, playing his part, the scared rookie who didn't know he was in danger. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to relocate, to do something. But he held position, trusting Hawk and Wyatt to do their jobs. He's setting up, Wyatt reported. Bipod deployed. He's settling into a shooting position. Estimate 30 seconds until he's ready to fire. Stand by, Hawk said. Cole, when I give the word, you move. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Just roll left and get behind that boulder. Roger, Ethan replied, his voice steadier than he felt. 20 seconds, Wyatt counted. 15, 10. Ethan's muscles tensed, ready to move. He's on target, Wyatt said, preparing to fire. Now, Hawk barked. Ethan rolled left, just as the Dragunov's distinctive crack echoed across the valley. The bullet hit exactly where his head had been, spraying rock fragments into the air. He scrambled behind the boulder, heart pounding, as Hawk and Wyatt opened fire on the depression. The ambush lasted less than 10 seconds. Hawk and Wyatt put 6 rounds into the sniper's position, precisely aimed, suppressing fire that would force anyone hiding there to either abandon the position or take cover and stop shooting. Target down, Wyatt reported. I saw him fall. We got him. Confirm, Hawk ordered. Cole, you stay put. Danny Marcus, move to grid November 7-3 and secure that position. Roger, Danny's voice came back. Moving now. The wait was excruciating. Ethan stayed behind his boulder, rifle ready, scanning for any sign of additional threats. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Had they really gotten the wolf? Or was this another apprentice, another test, another piece of the pattern? Danny's voice came over the radio 10 minutes later. Position secure. We have one enemy KIA. Male, approximately 25 years old. He was carrying a Dragunov and had photos of American positions in his pocket. But, he paused, this isn't the wolf. Too young. Clean-shaven. This is another apprentice. Damn it, Hawk muttered. He's still out there. But now he knows we're hunting him, Wyatt said. He sent one of his students to take the shot. That means he knew it was a trap. Or he was testing us, Ethan said. Seeing if we'd figured out his pattern. Seeing how we'd respond. Smart, Hawk admitted. The wolf just got a free lesson in our tactics without risking himself. He keyed his radio. All units maintain security. Extract a primary LZ and 2 mics. The helicopter ride back to Phobie Cobra was silent. They'd killed another of the wolf's apprentices, but the main threat was still out there. Still planning, still learning. And now he knew they were hunting him. Back at base, the intelligence officer had more news. The dead sniper had been identified through fingerprints. Local Taliban fighter trained by the wolf personally over the past 2 years. The photos found on his body included detailed diagrams of Phobie Cobra's defenses. They're planning something bigger, the lieutenant said. This isn't just about revenge anymore. The wolf is coordinating with Taliban leadership on a major operation. We just don't know what or when. Hawk studied the diagrams. How did they get this level of detail on our base? Inside help, maybe? Or just patient observation? The wolf has been operating in this province for 6 years. He knows the terrain. He knows our patterns. Then we change the patterns, Hawk said. Double the guard rotations, random patrol schedules. And I want snipers on the towers 24/7. If the wolf wants to come after us, he's going to find out that we don't make easy targets. That night, Ethan found a letter waiting on his cot. No postage, no return address. just his name written in careful English script. He opened it with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. The letter was short. Corporal Cole, your shot at the engineer was impressive. 4,287 meters is worthy of respect. Your grandfather would be proud. But pride comes before death. You have killed 2 of my students. They were young and learned valuable lessons in their final moments. Now it is time for you to learn yours. I am Hamza the Wolf Durrani. I was killing Soviet snipers when you were not yet born. I have forgotten more about this craft than you will ever know. You may have your grandfather's gift, but I have 40 years of experience. Before Ramadan ends in 3 days, we will meet, and you will learn the difference between talent and mastery. Come to the old Soviet observation post on Hill 471 at dawn tomorrow. Come alone, or I will kill one of your team every day until you face me with honor. This is not a request. This is the challenge of one warrior to another. Accept or prove yourself a coward. The Wolf. Ethan read the letter 3 times. Then he stood up and walked to Hawk's quarters. The Master Sergeant was still awake, reviewing maps by lamplight. He looked up as Ethan entered. "We've got a problem," Ethan said and handed him the letter. Hawk read it once, then again. Then he set it down carefully on his desk and looked at Ethan with an expression that mixed concern and calculation. "Hill 471, Hawk said. That's 15 clicks from here. Old Soviet position from the 80s. Good elevation. Clear sight lines in all directions." He paused. "It's a perfect place for a duel, and a perfect place for an ambush." "He's not going to ambush me," Ethan said. "He wants this to be honorable. That's his whole code. His code is also surviving for 40 years by being smart. This could be a trap. Maybe. But if I don't go, he'll kill someone from the team. He's already proven he can get letters onto base. That means he has eyes here. He knows our movements. And he's patient enough to pick us off one by one if I don't face him. So what do you want to do?" Ethan met Hawk's eyes. "I want to go. Tomorrow. Dawn. And I want to finish this." Hawk was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay, but not alone. I'm not sending you into that without backup. We'll position the team at a distance, far enough that the Wolf won't see them as interference, close enough that if things go sideways, we can respond. He's going to know if I bring backup. Probably. But he's also going to respect that you're being smart about it. Warriors respect warriors, but they don't respect fools." Hawk stood up. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, you're going to need every advantage you can get, because the Wolf isn't an apprentice. He's the real thing, and he's killed better men than both of us." Ethan returned to his cot but didn't sleep. He spent the night reading Prophet's journal, looking for any entry about the tiger, any lesson about facing an enemy who might be better than you. He found it near the end of Prophet's Vietnam entries. The handwriting was shakier, suggesting it had been written after a particularly difficult day. "Killed the tiger today. 18 hours in a hide site. Waiting, watching. My back cramped, my eyes burned from staring through the scope. Every minute was torture. But I waited because that's what this job demands. Patience above all else. The tiger was good, maybe better than me technically. But he made one mistake. He got impatient, moved when he should have waited. And in that half second of exposure, I took my shot. 1,400 yards. Clean kill. The question everyone asks after is, how does it feel to kill someone that skilled? The answer is, it doesn't feel like anything in the moment. You do the job. You pull the trigger. You watch them fall. The feeling comes later. When you realize that the only difference between you and the man in your crosshairs was that you were slightly more patient that day. That in another universe, another day, maybe he would have been the one writing this entry. That's what keeps me awake at night. Not the killing, but the knowing that it could just as easily have been me. Forgiven. Number 67. Ethan closed the journal and looked at the ceiling. Tomorrow he would face the Wolf, a man with 40 years of experience, a man who had survived the Soviet war and 6 years of American operations, a man who wanted this to be a duel of honor. And Ethan would have to be patient enough, skilled enough, lucky enough to survive. He touched Prophet's dog tags around his neck and whispered into the darkness, "If you're up there, Grandpa, I could use some of that Prophet luck about now." Outside, FO Cobra settled into its nighttime rhythms, guards on the towers, generators humming, the distant sound of artillery fire from another sector. All of it familiar now. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the hunter would finally meet the wolf, and only one of them would walk away. Dawn came cold to the Afghan mountains. Ethan stood at the edge of Food Cobra, watching the sun paint the eastern sky in shades of red and gold. Prophet's dog tags hung heavy around his neck. The M40A5 was slung across his back, the rifle that had carried his grandfather through Vietnam, now carrying him toward a duel that would end with someone dead. Behind him, Hawk finished the final brief with the team. The plan was simple because complicated plans got people killed. Ethan would approach Hill 471 from the south, following the old Soviet road that wound up through the rocks. Hawk, Wyatt, Danny, and Marcus would position themselves at various points along the ridgeline, far enough to give Ethan his honor duel, close enough to respond if the wolf broke his word. "You don't have to do this," Wyatt said, walking up beside him. "We could call in air support, level the whole hill. The wolf would never see it coming." "That's not how this works," Ethan replied. "He's giving me the chance to face him warrior to warrior. If I hide behind firepower, I'm saying I'm not good enough. And if I'm not good enough, then I shouldn't be wearing this uniform." "Your grandfather would say that's pride talking." "My grandfather spent 18 hours in a hide site waiting to kill the tiger. He understood that some fights you have to take on their terms. Or you're not really fighting, you're just surviving. And surviving isn't the same as winning." Hawk joined them, his face grim in the pre-dawn light. "Chopper leaves in 5. Last chance to back out." "I'm not backing out, Master Sergeant." "Didn't think so." Hawk extended his hand. "Prophet told me once that the hardest part of being a sniper isn't the shooting. It's the walking toward the fight when every instinct tells you to run. You're about to find out if you've got what it takes." Ethan took the handshake, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Then he picked up his pack and walked toward the waiting helicopter. The flight to the drop zone took 12 minutes. Ethan sat in silence, watching the landscape roll beneath them. Mountains that had seen empires rise and fall. Valleys where Alexander the Great had marched his army. Ridges where Soviet soldiers had died by the thousands. And now one more hill where one more fight would be decided by patience, skill, and luck. The Black Hawk touched down 3 kilometers from Hill 471. Ethan jumped out and the helicopter lifted off immediately, not wanting to advertise his position. The sudden silence was profound. Just wind, rocks, and the distant call of a bird that didn't know it was about to witness a killing. Ethan began walking. The old Soviet road was barely visible after 30 years of neglect. Erosion had reclaimed most of it, but the bones were still there. Switchbacks carved by engineers who understood mountains. Observation posts built by soldiers who knew that controlling the high ground meant controlling everything below it. His radio crackled. "Cole, you're clear to Hill 471. No movement detected." Hawk's voice was steady, professional, but Ethan could hear the underlying tension. "We're in position. You've got eyes on from 3 directions." "Roger, moving to contact." "Ethan," Wyatt's voice cut in, "remember what Prophet wrote about the tiger? Patience beats skill. Don't let him rush you into a mistake." "Copy that." The climb took an hour. Ethan moved carefully, using cover, staying aware of sight lines. The wolf was up there somewhere, watching, calculating. Probably had been watching since before dawn, studying Ethan's approach, looking for weaknesses. At the base of Hill 471, Ethan found the first sign. A white cloth tied to a rock, fluttering in the wind. A marker. The wolf's way of saying you're on the right path. Keep coming. Ethan keyed his radio, found a marker. Continuing up. "Copy. Be advised, we're picking up something on thermal. Single heat signature near the old Soviet bunker at the summit. Could be him. Or could be a decoy. The wolf is too smart to make it easy." "Agreed. Your call on how to proceed." "I'm going straight up. If he wanted to ambush me, he'd have done it already." The path steepened. Ethan's boots found purchase on loose scree, his breathing steady despite the altitude. Around him, the mountain was waking up. Insects beginning their daily work. Small lizards darting between rocks. Life continuing, regardless of the human drama playing out. Another marker. This one closer to the summit. And beside it, something else. A spent cartridge case. Dragunov 7.62 by 54 millimeter, the wolf's signature. Ethan picked it up, studying it. The brass was old, weathered. This wasn't from a recent shot. This was a trophy, a message. "I've killed here before. Now it's your turn to try me." He dropped the case and kept climbing. The Soviet observation bunker came into view as Ethan crested the final ridge. It was a concrete structure half buried in the hillside, built to withstand artillery, but slowly losing its battle with time. The roof had partially collapsed. The walls were pockmarked with bullet holes from conflicts that predated Ethan's birth. And standing in front of it, silhouetted against the rising sun, was a man. The wolf was smaller than Ethan expected, maybe 5'8", lean in the way that soldiers get when they spend decades in the field with never quite enough food. He wore traditional Afghan clothing, a pakol hat on his head, and carried a Dragunov SVD rifle with the kind of casual familiarity that spoke of thousands of hours behind the trigger. His face was weathered by sun and wind and 60 years of life. A scar ran across his left cheek, pale against his dark skin. But his eyes were what held Ethan's attention. Clear, alert. The eyes of a man who had seen death so many times he was no longer surprised by it. "Corporal Cole," the wolf said in English. His accent was thick, but his words were clear. "You came, that is good, that shows courage. You didn't give me much choice." "There is always choice. You could have hidden behind your air support, behind your artillery, behind the walls of your base. Instead, you walk up this mountain alone. That deserves respect." The wolf gestured to a flat area about 50 meters away. "We will do this properly, like warriors, not like cowards shooting from shadows." "What are the rules?" "Simple. We both take position at opposite ends of this plateau. Distance of 500 meters. When I fire a signal shot into the air, we begin. First man to make a killing shot wins. The other dies. No backup, no interference, just skill against skill. And if I don't agree, then I kill one of your team every day until you do, or until you leave Afghanistan. I am patient, Corporal. I have waited 40 years for many things. I can wait for you to make the right choice." Ethan studied the wolf, looking for deception. But all he saw was a warrior who truly believed in honor, a man from a different time, fighting a war according to rules that the modern world had forgotten. "Okay," Ethan said. 500 meters. Signal shot to start, clean duel." The wolf smiled, and for a moment Ethan could see the young man he must have been. Before the Soviet war, before 40 years of killing, before the weight of all those deaths carved lines into his face. "Your grandfather," the wolf said. "Prophet Cross. I knew his reputation. In the 80s, Soviet snipers spoke of him with fear, the American ghost who never missed. I wanted to face him once, but he retired before I had the chance. He died 3 months ago. I know, I saw the obituary. Your military made him famous. 127 confirmed kills." The wolf paused. "I have 116. Today, I take my 117th. And I take the grandson of a legend. That is how a warrior should die. In battle, against a worthy opponent." "Or maybe you die," Ethan said. "Maybe today a 58-year-old man learns that experience isn't enough when you're going against someone who has nothing to lose." "Perhaps," the wolf's smile widened. "That is why we fight, to find out who was right." He gestured toward the plateau. "Take your position, Corporal. When you are ready, signal me. Then we begin." Ethan walked to the southern end of the plateau. 500 meters away, the wolf walked to the northern end. The distance was significant but manageable. Not the extreme ranges that had made Ethan famous. This was a test of fundamentals. Wind reading, bullet drop calculation, trigger control, all the basic skills that separated snipers from regular infantry. He established his position behind a low rock wall that provided minimal cover. Through his scope, he could see the wolf doing the same. Both of them exposed, both of them vulnerable. Ethan keyed his radio one last time. "Hawk, I'm in position, about to begin." "Copy that, we've got you. If he breaks the rules, we'll drop him before he can celebrate." "He won't break the rules. This is about honor for him." "Honor doesn't stop bullets, Cole. Stay sharp." Ethan clicked off the radio and raised his hand, signaling the wolf that he was ready. The wolf raised his hand in return. Then he pointed his Dragunov toward the sky and fired. The crack echoed across the mountains, and birds launched from their roosts in panic. The duel had begun. Ethan settled into his scope, Crosshairs finding the wolf's position. But the wolf was already moving, relocating from his initial spot to a position 3 meters left. "Smart. Never stay where your enemy last saw you." Ethan adjusted, tracking the movement. But the wolf was fast for his age, moving with the economy of motion that came from decades of practice. He dropped behind cover before Ethan could establish a clean shot. 5 seconds passed. 10. Ethan waited, controlling his breathing. 4 seconds in. Hold for 2. 6 seconds out. Movement. The wolf's rifle barrel appeared over the edge of his cover, and Ethan immediately shifted position. The Dragunov cracked, and the bullet hit rock 2 feet from where Ethan's head had been. Fast. The wolf was incredibly fast. He'd identified Ethan's position, calculated the shot, and fired in under 3 seconds. Ethan relocated again, this time moving 5 meters right to a cluster of smaller rocks. Through his scope, he searched for the wolf, but found nothing. The old warrior had gone to ground, invisible among the stone and shadows. This is what prophet meant, Ethan thought. Patience. The tiger rushed and died. The wolf is patient, so I need to be more patient. He settled into his new position and waited. 3 minutes passed. 5. The sun climbed higher and heat began to shimmer off the rocks. Ethan's eyes strained through the scope, looking for any sign of movement. A shadow that didn't quite fit. A color that was wrong for the surroundings. Anything. Then he saw it, a subtle shift in the patterns of light and dark. The wolf was using a time-tested sniper technique. Slow movement, so slow that the human eye wouldn't register it as motion. Just a gradual change that could be mistaken for shadows shifting as the sun moved. Ethan tracked the movement, letting his crosshairs drift along the probable path, waiting for the wolf to commit, waiting for the moment when caution gave way to action. There, the wolf was repositioning to a spot that would give him a better angle on Ethan's last known position. He was moving with impressive stealth, but he was moving, and movement meant exposure. Ethan's finger touched the trigger. The mathematics ran through his mind automatically now. Distance 512 meters. Wind 6 miles per hour from 3 o'clock. Temperature 91 degrees. Bullet drop approximately 18 inches. Wind drift maybe 2 inches right. He exhaled to the bottom of his breath. The world went silent except for his heartbeat. The crosshairs settled on the point where the wolf would emerge from behind cover. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. The wolf appeared, moving into the open for the half second he needed to establish his new position. Ethan fired. The bullet caught the wolf in the left shoulder, spinning him. Not a kill shot, but solid contact. The wolf dropped behind cover, and Ethan could see dark blood staining the rocks where he'd been standing. First blood, Wyatt's voice came over the radio. Good shot, but he's still in the fight. Ethan knew that. A shoulder wound would slow the wolf down, make it harder to hold his rifle steady. But it wouldn't stop him. Men like the wolf didn't stop until they were dead or unconscious. The wolf's voice echoed across the plateau, speaking in Pashto. Ethan didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Respect. The wolf had been hit, and instead of anger, there was acknowledgement of a good shot. From behind cover, the wolf switched to English. Your grandfather taught you well, Corporal. That was skillful. But now I teach you something. Ethan waited, scanning for any sign of the wolf's position. Nothing. The old warrior had gone completely still, letting his camouflage in the terrain hide him. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Ethan's muscles began to protest the static position. He wanted to shift, to relieve the cramping in his legs. But movement meant exposure, and exposure meant death. Then the wolf made his move. It wasn't what Ethan expected. Instead of taking a shot from his current position, the wolf burst from cover and sprinted laterally across the plateau. Running at full speed despite the shoulder wound, closing the distance between them from 500 meters to 450 in just seconds. Ethan swung his rifle to track, but the wolf was weaving using terrain, making himself a difficult target. Ethan fired anyway, knowing the shot was low probability, but needing to make the wolf pay a price for his aggression. The bullet missed by inches, kicking up dust beside the wolf's feet, but it didn't slow him down. He dove behind a large boulder, and suddenly the distance between them was uncomfortably close. He's changing the game, Ethan realized. At 450 meters, the wolf's experience becomes more valuable. The shots are faster, the calculations simpler. He's trying to turn this into a quick draw competition instead of a long-range duel. Ethan relocated immediately, moving to a position that would give him a better angle on the wolf's new cover. As he moved, he caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. The wolf had moved again. He wasn't behind the boulder anymore. He was somewhere else, and Ethan had no idea where. Stay calm, Ethan told himself. This is exactly what Prophet faced with the tiger. A skilled opponent trying to get inside his decision cycle, trying to make him panic and rush a shot. He scanned methodically, section by section. The plateau was maybe 200 meters across. You're right. dotted with rocks and the ruins of old Soviet positions. Plenty of places to hide, plenty of angles to shoot from. Movement caught his eye. 70 meters to his left, a small piece of cloth fluttered. The edge of the wolf's shirt visible for just a moment before disappearing. Got you, Ethan thought. But something felt wrong. The exposure was too easy, too obvious. Would a man with 40 years of experience really make such a basic mistake? It's a decoy, Ethan realized. He wants me to focus on that position while he sets up somewhere else. Ethan didn't take the bait. Instead, he thought about what he would do if he were the wolf. Where would he actually position himself if he wanted Ethan focused on the wrong place? The answer came quickly. The old Soviet bunker. It was slightly elevated, providing good sight lines. And if the wolf was inside, he'd be protected from multiple angles while having a clear view of where Ethan was likely to focus. Ethan shifted his aim toward the bunker. Through his scope, he could see the dark entrance, but nothing inside. The interior was too shadowed to make out details. He waited, patient, watching for the smallest sign, and then he saw it, a glint of metal. Just a reflection from the wolf's scope as the angle caught the sun. It was visible for less than a second, but it was enough. Ethan fired 3 shots in rapid succession, walking them through the bunker entrance. It was suppressing fire, not aimed at a specific target. The goal was to make the wolf move, to force him to relocate and expose himself. The technique worked. The wolf burst from the bunker's side entrance, moving fast despite his wound. He fired twice as he ran, both shots coming close enough that Ethan felt the pressure wave of the bullets passing. Ethan tracked and fired. The first shot missed. The second caught the wolf in the right leg, buckling his knee. The old warrior went down hard, rolling behind a pile of rubble 20 meters from the bunker. 2 hits. The wolf was wounded in both shoulder and leg now, but he was still in the fight, still dangerous. Wounded animals were often the most dangerous because they had nothing left to lose. "Your skill is real," the wolf called out, his voice strained with pain but still strong. "Your grandfather would be proud, but skill is not enough. You must also have the will to finish." "I have the will," Ethan replied. "The question is whether you have the strength left to continue." "Strength comes from purpose, Corporal. I have killed 116 men, each one necessary, each one a choice between their life and the lives of my people. Today I add one more. Or I die trying. There is honor in both outcomes." Ethan repositioned again, unwilling to stay static even during conversation. As he moved, he caught sight of blood on the rocks where the wolf had fallen. A lot of blood. The leg wound was serious, maybe arterial. The wolf was running out of time, but that made him more dangerous, not less. A man who knew he was dying would take risks that a healthy man wouldn't. Ethan keyed his radio. "Hawk, the wolf is hit twice, shoulder and leg. He's losing blood. This should be over soon." "Don't get confident," Hawk replied. "Wounded enemies are unpredictable. Stay focused." The plateau went quiet. 2 wounded warriors separated by less than 100 meters now, each waiting for the other to make a mistake. The sun climbed higher. The temperature pushed past 100 degrees. Sweat stung Ethan's eyes, but he didn't dare move to wipe it away. Then the wolf did something unexpected. He began to sing. It was a Pashto song, low and rhythmic. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. It was a death song, the kind of thing warriors sang when they knew the end was coming and wanted to face it with dignity. The singing continued for maybe 30 seconds. Then it stopped, and the wolf's voice rang out one more time. "Corporal Cole, I have one request. When you tell the story of this fight, tell it true. Tell them that Hamza Durrani did not hide, did not run, faced his death like a warrior. Can you promise me this?" "I promise," Ethan said, "and I'll tell them you gave me the hardest fight of my life." "That is good. That is all a warrior can ask." The wolf paused. "Your grandfather killed the tiger with patience. Today, you kill the wolf the same way. You have earned this victory. Now take it." There was a finality in the wolf's voice that made Ethan's instincts scream warning. This was it, the last move. Whatever the wolf was about to do, it would be his final play. Ethan settled deeper into his position, scope focused on the pile of rubble where the wolf was hiding. Waiting, patient, just like Prophet had taught him. The wolf moved. He didn't try to hide this time, didn't use cover or concealment. He simply stood up, despite his wounds, and raised his Dragunov to his shoulder. The movement was slow because of his injuries, but his aim was steady. For a moment, Ethan and the wolf were both in the open, both aimed at each other, both with their fingers on triggers. A frozen second where the entire duel came down to who would shoot first and whose shot would be true. Ethan's training took over. Breathing stopped at the bottom of the exhale. Crosshairs settled on center mass. Trigger press smooth and steady. The M48-5 fired. The Dragunov fired. 2 shots, so close together they almost sounded like one. Ethan felt the impact before he heard it. The wolf's bullet caught him in the upper chest, high and right. The ceramic plate in his body armor stopped the round from penetrating, but the kinetic energy was enough to knock him backward. He fell hard, the breath driven from his lungs, stars exploding across his vision. Through the scope, he'd seen his own shot connect. Center mass. The wolf had jerked backward from the impact, then slowly crumpled to his knees. Ethan fought to breathe, his chest screaming in agony from the armor impact. Nothing broken, he thought, but it would hurt like hell for days. He forced himself to sit up, rifle still at the ready, watching the wolf's position. The old warrior was on his knees, one hand pressed against his chest where Ethan's bullet had found its mark. Blood seeped between his fingers. His Dragunov lay on the ground beside him. Ethan stood on shaky legs and began walking toward the wolf. Each step sent jolts of pain through his chest, but he kept moving. Behind him, he could hear the helicopter approaching, Hawk and the team responding to the shots, but they were still minutes away. By the time Ethan reached the wolf, the old warrior had sat back against the rocks. His breathing was labored, bubbles of blood appearing at his lips. Lung shot, fatal, even with immediate medical attention that wasn't coming in time. "Good shot," the wolf said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Very good shot. You have your grandfather's gift." "You gave me the fight of my life," Ethan replied. He knelt beside the wolf, and for a moment the war fell away. 2 snipers, one at the beginning of his journey and one at the end, sharing a moment of understanding that no one else could comprehend. "My rifle," the wolf said. "Take it. It has killed many, but always with honor. Never from ambush, never against civilians, only warriors. It deserves to be carried by another warrior." Ethan picked up the Dragunov. The wood was worn smooth by decades of use. The metal showed signs of meticulous care. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a companion that had seen the wolf through 40 years of war. "I'll take care of it," Ethan said. "And I'll tell your story, you have my word." The wolf smiled, blood staining his teeth. "That is all I can ask." He closed his eyes. "Tell them also that in the end, patience won. Just like your grandfather taught you. The young wolf was patient. The old wolf was not. That is why you live and I die." His breathing slowed, stopped. And Hamza the Wolf Durrani, veteran of the Soviet-Afghan War, killer of 116 men, guardian of obsolete codes of honor, died on a mountain under the same sun that had witnessed 40 years of his wars. Ethan reached out and closed the wolf's eyes. Then he stood, looking down at the man who had given him the fight of his life. The helicopter touched down on the plateau, and Hawk jumped out before the skids even settled. He ran toward Ethan, weapon ready, scanning for threats. "It's over," Ethan said. "The wolf is dead." Hawk looked at the body, then at Ethan. "You're hit. Body armor caught it. I'll be okay." Wyatt and the others arrived, securing the area. Marcus started to say something, then stopped, seeing the look on Ethan's face. This wasn't a moment for congratulations or celebrations. This was a moment for respect. Hawk knelt beside the wolf's body, studying him. "I knew about him. Read the intelligence reports. Killed 6 of our snipers over the years." He looked up at Ethan. "You just did something nobody else could do. You took down a legend." "No," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't take down a legend. I beat him in a fair fight that he insisted on having. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah, there is." They extracted the wolf's body along with them. It was the right thing to do. Warriors deserved proper burial, not to be left on a mountainside for scavengers. During the flight back to Phobie Cobra, Ethan sat in silence, the wolf's Dragunov across his lap, thinking about Prophet's journal entries, about the tiger, about the weight of killing someone you respect. When they landed, the base erupted in celebration. The wolf was dead. The threat was over. Marines who'd been looking over their shoulders for years could finally breathe easier. But Ethan didn't feel like celebrating. He went straight to the barracks, pulled out Prophet's journal, and turned to a blank page. Afghanistan, August 2012. Second combat kill. Hamza the Wolf Durrani, age 58. Taliban sniper, Soviet war veteran, 116 confirmed kills. We dueled honorably at 500 meters on Hill 471. He wounded me once, I wounded him twice, and my third shot was fatal. He died with dignity. Final words were about honor and patience. He asked me to tell his story true. So here it is. He was the enemy. But he was also a warrior who lived by a code and died by it. He gave me the hardest fight I've ever had, and he earned my respect. Question: how do you celebrate killing someone you respect? Answer: you don't. You just carry the weight and remember that war makes enemies out of men who, in another life, might have been brothers. Forgiven. Number 2. He closed the journal and lay back on his cot. Around him, the celebration continued, but it felt distant, unreal, like it was happening to someone else. Hawk found him an hour later. The master sergeant sat down on the adjacent cot, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered one to Ethan. The colonel wants to see you tomorrow, probably going to pin another medal on you. They're talking about putting you up for a silver star. Great, Ethan said without enthusiasm. You did good out there, Cole. Real good. The wolf was the best they had, and you beat him. I got lucky. He was wounded and bleeding. If he'd been healthy, it might have gone different. But he wasn't healthy, and it didn't go different. You won. That's all that matters. Is it? Ethan looked at Hawk. Prophet killed 127 men over 2 wars. The wolf killed 116. I've killed 2. And both of them, I feel like I lost something in the winning. That's called having a conscience, Hawk said. That's what separates warriors from murderers. You feel the weight because you understand what you took. That's good. That means you're still human. Did Prophet feel this way? Every damn day, as far as I could tell. Why do you think he kept that journal? Why do you think he wrote forgiven after every entry? He was trying to make peace with what he'd done. Hawk paused. You know what he told me in Fallujah? He said that being a good sniper doesn't mean being a good killer. It means being good at carrying the weight of what you've done. The killing is easy. The carrying is hard. They sat in silence for a while, drinking their coffee, listening to the sounds of the bass. Finally, Hawk stood up. Get some rest. You earned it. And Cole, one more thing. Your grandfather would be proud of how you handled yourself out there. Not just the shooting, but the way you gave the wolf his dignity. That takes character. After Hawk left, Ethan pulled out his phone. He had messages waiting. His mother, his sister, friends, all of them congratulating him, telling him how proud they should be. But there was one message he needed to send. He opened a new text and typed carefully. Mom, I'm okay. Got into a situation today, but came through fine. I understand now why Grandpa didn't talk much about his service. Some things are hard to explain to people who weren't there. I miss him. I wish I could talk to him about all of this, but I think he's watching, and I think he understands. I'll call when I can. Love you. Tell Sarah I'm safe. He hit send, then put the phone away. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new threats, new opportunities to prove himself or fail. But tonight he just wanted to sit with the weight of what he'd done and try to understand it. 3 weeks later, the medal ceremony was held on a clear morning at Phobe Cobra. The entire battalion assembled to watch Colonel Hartwick pin the silver star on Ethan's chest. The citation read in part, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States. Corporal Cole voluntarily engaged in single combat with a high-value enemy combatant, demonstrating extraordinary courage and tactical skill. Ethan stood at attention through the ceremony, feeling the weight of the medal being added to the weight of everything else. When it was over, Hawk pulled him aside. Division wants you back at Lejeune, he said. They want to make you an instructor. Use your experience to train the next generation of snipers. What about 3rd Recon? We'll manage. But honestly, Cole, you've done enough. You made a record shot. You took out the enemy's best sniper. You've proven everything you needed to prove. There's no shame in stepping back and passing on what you learned. I'll think about it, Ethan said. That night, he sat under the stars and read the final entry in Prophet's journal. It was dated 2 weeks before his death. To whoever reads this after I'm gone, probably Ethan. If you've gotten this far, you've read about 127 men I killed over 2 wars. You've seen me struggle with the weight. Try to justify it. Try to make peace with it. Here's what I've learned after 60 years. You never make peace with it. The weight doesn't get lighter. You just get stronger at carrying it. Every man I killed was someone's son, Some were fathers, some were brothers. They all mattered to someone. And taking that away, even for the right reasons, cost something. It cost me sleep, cost me peace, cost me pieces of my soul I never got back. But here's the thing, and this is what I want you to understand. I'd do it all again. Every shot, every kill, because each one saved lives. Marines who got to go home, soldiers who lived to see their families. The math is cold and brutal and true. My 127 saved maybe 1,000, maybe more. That's the burden of being a sniper. You do terrible things for righteous reasons, and you carry both the terrible and the righteous for the rest of your life. If you're reading this, you're probably facing the same choices I faced. Here's my advice. Do your job, protect your brothers, make every shot count. And when it's over, don't try to forget. Remember, carry the weight. Let it make you better, not bitter. The men you kill deserve to be remembered, even if only by you. Especially by you. That's the price of the gift. That's the weight of the crosshairs. Carry it well, carry it with honor, and know that somewhere, somehow, I'm proud of you. Forgiven. All of them. Always. Prophet. Ethan closed the journal for the last time and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, Prophet was watching, along with the engineer and the wolf, and all the others who had paid the price for this endless war. He touched the dog tags around his neck and whispered into the night, "I understand now, Grandpa. I understand the weight, and I promise I'll carry it the way you taught me, with honor, with dignity, and with the knowledge that sometimes the hardest thing to do is also the right thing." The stars gave no answer, but Ethan didn't need one. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he would tell Hawk that he'd take the instructor position at Lejeune. He would pass on Prophet's lessons to the next generation. He would make sure that future snipers understood not just how to shoot, but how to carry the weight of what they'd done. Because that was the real lesson, not the mathematics of bullet drop or wind drift, not the techniques of camouflage and fieldcraft. The real lesson was that being a sniper meant carrying the weight of every shot for the rest of your life. And if you couldn't carry that weight, you had no business pulling the trigger. 6 months later, Corporal Ethan Cole returned to Wyoming for the first time since his deployment. He drove out to the small cemetery where Prophet was buried and placed 2 things on the headstone. The silver star he'd been awarded for killing the wolf, and the wolf's Dragunov rifle, cleaned and cared for, wrapped in the same oilcloth that had protected Prophet's M40A1 for 60 years. "I brought him home, Grandpa," Ethan said to the stone. "The wolf, he died like a warrior, and warriors deserve to rest with other warriors. I think you'd understand that." The wind moved through the Wyoming pines, and for just a moment, Ethan could almost hear Prophet's voice. "Well done, son. Well done." Ethan stood there until the sun set behind the mountains, then walked back to his truck. Tomorrow, he would start his new assignment at Lejeune. Tomorrow, he would begin teaching the next generation. Tomorrow, he would pass on the lessons that Prophet had taught him about patience and discipline and the weight of the crosshairs. But tonight, he was just a 22-year-old kid from Wyoming who had learned what it meant to be a warrior, who had faced the impossible and survived, who carried the weight and would carry it for the rest of his life. And somehow that was enough. The end.